Patriots OTAs are underway. We give you all the learnings and an update on the quarterback situation here on Patscast.
Ready for more OTAs in the air. The season's on the rise. Brace yourself.
Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. OTAs are officially underway, and it's great to see most of the New England Patriots players out there on the field together. Drake Maye, obviously, throwing the ball alongside Jacoby Brissett, Bailey Zappi, Joe Milton. Been some interesting updates when it comes to the quarterback position. Jerod Mayo revealed a lot about what that might look like going forward. Revealed maybe a little too much, in my opinion. But overall, I have to say, if you look at the clips last week and you look at the clips this week, look, I'm no expert on football mechanics. I defer everything to Tom House, as I've said on the podcast before. But just with the eye test, Drake Maye looked a lot more polished than he did this past week. And his footwork looked better. His release looked quicker. Yeah, there was a moment where he was doing some footwork drills and he tripped over the pad. That wasn't a good look. And of course, that clip's going all around social media. But all of the other clips of Drake Maye and his footwork side by side with some of the other quarterbacks, it actually doesn't look as bad as we were thinking, and he's already implementing some of these learnings. Now, the test is, when you put him out in a real game situation, is he going to go back to some of his old bad habits? That remains to be seen, but overall, he looked just as accurate, if not more accurate, than Jacoby Brissett, than Bailey Zappi, certainly more accurate than Joe Milton, who, look, his mechanics look pretty good, but his accuracy was all over the place. They were doing that drill where you practice your footwork, and then there's 3 targets on the net, and the quarterback's coach or somebody else has to call the color of the target, and you practice your footwork, and then you have to throw it to that target. Drake Maye, I don't think I saw him miss. He might have missed one in some of the clips that I saw. Joe Milton was missing a bunch. Zappi and Brissett also looked pretty good, but again, these are just drills, but overall, Drake Maye's footwork looks quicker, more polished, and his release is a lot faster. And this is just 1 week into the job. And look, Jerod Mayo had a lot of good things to say about him after practice. He said, yeah, I thought Drake did a good job not only progressing on the field, but also off the field. You can already tell, he is going to put in that extra work. I walked by the quarterback meeting room, and he's just in there by himself watching film. Those are the things that you want to see. I'm excited to see his growth going forward. That's a good sign to see, and obviously he's implementing all of these learnings very quickly, and if he improves at the rate he seems to be improving at, maybe that is enough for him to win the job, but a lot of reps are going to have to happen in training camp for him to earn that. That being said, Jerod Mayo kind of implied that the roster is only going to have 3 quarterbacks on it going into training camp. He said, once we get to training camp, that's real football. So out here in the spring, we'll rock with 4 quarterbacks, but as soon as we get to training camp, you're going to get to start paring down the roster. Now, why would he say that? I don't know. This is my issue with Jerod Mayo, right? He's very friendly with the media, very transparent. We haven't had anywhere near this footage with the Patriots in the past, even at training camp, much less OTAs. These things were pretty closed off in the past, so it's great to have all of this access to everything going on. Jerod Mayo and Drake Maye were mic'd, and the Patriots shared that on social media today. A lot of transparency, far more than we've seen in the past 20-plus years with Bill Belichick, but I'm not sure why he's already talking about, well, we're probably going to trim back the quarterbacks. Maybe the idea is, hey, maybe I'll float it out there that a guy like Bailey Zappi could be on the trade market, but it's not like you're going to get a lot in return for Bailey Zappi. So I don't know why Mayo is sharing that information, but in all likelihood, right, Bailey Zappi is the odd man out, right? You're not going to get rid of Drake Maye. You're not going to get rid of Jacoby Brissett, the presumed starter. And he just drafted Joe Milton. If you're going to put him on the practice squad, some team will probably go and snag him. So that just leaves Bailey Zappi, who is the odd man out in that situation. And as the practice went on today, Zappi did not look very good. Now, it should also be noted that Drake Maye, putting in all this extra work, he stayed at the end of practice. Him, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, the 2 receivers they drafted early in the draft, stayed longer than everybody else, practiced a bit longer on the field, extended their work together. Maye was calling out specific routes to receivers, and they were putting in that work together. So that's really good to see. But overall, as expected, The defense looked a whole lot better than the offense as a whole. Receivers in the 7-on-7 and the 11-on-11 work, at least from the reports that I've seen, the receivers really struggled to get open on the competitive drills. They lack separation, and that made life a little bit hard for some of these quarterbacks, although I will say I think Drake Maye did a pretty good job in those situations from everything that I've read. Good news, Christian Gonzalez looks like Christian Gonzalez, sticky cornerback. So all the concerns that we have heading into the offseason, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be ready to go week one? I think those are gone at this point. Gonzalez is going to be out there, and he's going to be contributing as really, I think, a top NFL cornerback and a guy who I wouldn't be shocked if he made the Pro Bowl in year two. He was on track to be a potential Rookie of the Year guy last year up until he got hurt. But despite the defense, Drake Maye completed 6 of 7 passes in the team 11-on-11 and 7-on-7 competitive drills. So completed all but one. That's pretty good. That's all I could ask for from a rookie quarterback going out there who has some mechanical issues, has some footwork issues. He's going out there in competitive drills with receivers that are lacking separation against probably a top 5 NFL defense, and he's completing 6 of 7 in those drills. That's good to see, at least at OTAs. You hope that continues. In other news, Jacoby Brissett had 9 of 14 in those drills. Bailey Zappi, as I mentioned, struggled a bit more as practice went on. He completed just 3 of 5, and Joe Milton, surprisingly, completed all 4 of his passes in those drills. So even though in some of those drills before the competitive drills, Joe Milton was struggling with his accuracy, that's always going to be an issue with him. He was pretty good when it got a little bit competitive out there. But overall, that seems to be what the Patriots are doing. Bailey Zappi is playing the backup role as of right now. I wouldn't read too much into it. They're just giving the vets more opportunities out there. So right now it looks like the QB depth chart as of OTAs, this is not final, is Jacoby Brissett at number 1, Bailey Zappi at number 2, Drake Maye at number 3, and then Joe Milton at number 4. Those seem to be the way the reps are going, although it looks like Drake Maye did have more reps than Bailey Zappi, so they're kind of putting him in there as the backup, but they're going to respect Zappi as the veteran quarterback somewhat on the team. At least they're going to put him at number 2 when it comes to the reps. But like Gerard Mayo said, Zappi's probably the odd man out. So if they're not going to have a quarterback on the roster, if they're only going to run with 3 once training camp begins, I would expect Zappi to be gone. And they're running with those 3, Jacoby Brissett, Drake Maye, and Joe Milton, which really raises the question, like, if you're going to do that, you have to be certain that Drake Maye is at least partially ready, right? Because this could be a Justin Herbert situation with Tyrod Taylor, who was the Chargers starter his rookie year, went out a few plays into the game, and he's been their quarterback ever since. Josh Allen was behind Nathan Peterman in Buffalo. Peterman was awful. They were down like 40-0. Josh Allen took over in garbage time, never gave up the position. So Jacoby Brissett goes down, and you don't have Bailey Zappi on that roster. You got to be confident that he's ready to at least go out there and be a starting level NFL quarterback, even if he does have a tremendous learning curve, even if he's seen as a developmental player, at least in year 1. But that's what it sounds like Gerard Mayo wants to do, because he ain't cutting Jacoby Brissett, he ain't cutting Drake Maye, and you don't want to cut Joe Milton or demote him to the practice squad, because then you're going to lose him in all likelihood. So, I don't know, a little more detail coming from Gerard Mayo. Again, I don't know why he said it, but that's what it looks like as of right now. Now, the receivers, like I said, they struggled a little bit to create separation. I went over the completions for the quarterbacks. One of those was a drop by KJ Osborne, the guy who signed a 1-year deal coming out of Minnesota. Interestingly, and this is something that I heard Taylor Kyles say on a podcast, that he thinks KJ Osborne, who people were talking like might be the number 1 guy after they signed him, he may be a guy on the chopping block. Like, they have a crowded receiving room right now, and if you're only going to have him for 1 year and there's receivers on the roster who look better than him, and he's struggling at OTAs, he's struggling at training camp, it's possible. And I'm excited about the KJ Osborne signing. Maybe he goes somewhere else and he's gone, which would be a bit surprising, because I think they brought him in as a guy who is kind of a slot receiver, but maybe could play on the outside and do a little bit more that he couldn't have done in Minnesota in that crowded receiving room with Jefferson and Jordan Addison. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if KJ Osborne is gone. Kendrick Bourne did not practice, although he was there, which gave Tyquan Thornton opportunities as the boundary X wide receiver. He put on a lot of weight this offseason, looks a lot bigger, but he's going to have to earn his roster spot. KJ Osborne played the slot role a little bit, and Demario Douglas did as well. But Thornton is fighting. He's fighting for a roster spot, and assuming his health is good, he's picking up the coaching. I wouldn't write that guy off just yet. Everyone kind of assumed he would be cut with that crowded receiving core, but who knows? Now, another guy who actually really stood out today from everything I've heard is Kayshon Boutte, a guy we kind of forgot about. Didn't get his left or right foot down, forgot what it was in the Eagles game, basically didn't play the rest of the season after week 1 this past year, was a bit of a project from LSU, had some attitude issues. We all know that about Boutte, but I guess he made the diving catch of the day, got praise from the wide receivers coach Underwood. Gonna need to be a little bit more consistent out there, but I mean, again, that is a crowded room. You got Thornton, you got Osborne, you got Demario Douglas, Jalen Reagor. Don't forget about Kawan Baker. They added Jalen Polk, Javon Baker. Kayshon Boutte is making a case. Not all those guys are going to make the team. Maybe there's some trade opportunities if some of them show a little bit in the preseason. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And maybe KJ Osborne is on the chopping block if that's what happens. If Javon Baker especially. I think Jalen Polk is going to be a real contributor, probably a number 1 guy perhaps at some point in year 1. He looks really good out there. But not all those guys are going to make the roster, so that's interesting. And then another interesting spot is the offensive line. And it looks like the starters, or at least on day 1, were Chuck Okorafor at left tackle, Sidy Sow at left guard, David Andrews at center, Nick Leverett at right guard, and then, of course, Mike Owenu at the right tackle position. Chuck Okorafor has played on the left side before, but he's basically transitioning from right tackle to left tackle where he hasn't spent as much time, but he started on the far left side at OTAs. And, of course, Caden Wallace was out there. He's the guy who played right tackle at Penn State that they drafted this year, that they're looking to make the transition to the left tackle side and be their starter there for years to come. So he's playing behind Chuck Okorafor, and no indicator whether or not Wallace seems to be ahead on the depth chart from Okorafor. Right now, they're giving the veterans the starting reps. But that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in training camp. And, of course, Vidarian Lowe, God forbid, took reps at left tackle as well. He was out there, so we'll see if he makes the team. Hopefully, I'm not the biggest Vidarian Lowe fan. A lot of Patriots fans are. He's been terrible in kind of a backup role at the left tackle position, but he's out there fighting for a job along with some of these other players. Juju Smith-Schuster was interviewed at OTAs and said, well, the reason I played bad last year, I was only at about 60%, and the team knew this, but they played me there anyway, but I'm 100% now. So there's another guy that I didn't mention talking about fighting for a job at the receiving position, Juju Smith-Schuster. Where does he fit into this equation? Especially if Javon Baker looks really good, with Jalen Polk, with Douglas, with KJ Osborne. What if Kayshon Boutte and Tyquan Thornton can earn a job? I don't know if there's a spot for Juju, but he's obviously talking a good game. I was at 60% last year. You're going to get 40% more from me this year. Is 40% enough? I'm not sure. We expected him to be a real replacement for Jacoby Myers, which he was not. But I don't know. He's making the excuses already. Let's see if he shows it on the field. Some good news. Marcus Jones, remember him? Missed all of last year with a season-ending shoulder injury. Looked really great the year before and his role as cornerback, but really on special teams, on punt returns. He won the game against the Jets a couple seasons ago in the final seconds on a punt return. Says he's 100%. So that's really good to see. Some of the guys that were missing, Matt Judon, Devon Godshaw, Josh Uche, and Anthony Jennings were all missing from OTAs. But remember, OTAs are optional, and nearly everyone was there. Some people who didn't practice but were they were present even though they didn't participate. Cole Strange, we know he's recovering from an injury. Jelani Tavai, he's had kind of an injury history. So maybe something's going on there. And of course, Kendrick Bourne coming back from an injury, fighting. I don't think he's fighting for a receiver job. He's going to have a job on the roster, but he did not participate as he recovers from an injury. But he's been practicing a lot with Bailey Zappi, with Tyquan Thornton. So you would expect him to be 100% by the time week 1 comes around. But overall, it's really great to have all this access with all this video footage. Patriots being very transparent, a little too transparent if you ask me under the Gerard Mayo regime, but for someone that talks about the Patriots on a daily basis, this content is gold, and it's great that I can put these podcasts together and talk about something as minor as day 1 of OTAs. And Drake Maye's the guy we're all watching right now, and it's really hard to change your pitching motion, to change your golf swing, and I can imagine it's just as hard to change the way you throw the football after everything you've learned over the years in high school and college. But Drake Maye already seems to be implementing those learnings, and if he's progressed as much as it looks like he's progressed in 1 week with the Patriots, just imagine what he can do in training camp and in the preseason, and maybe he really can fight for that starting role. That's going to be something to watch going forward. But that's it for this episode of Pat's Cast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. We'll be back the rest of the week with more Patriots coverage.
Let's cast this on.